Hi there, welcome to the Fiber Nymph DyeWorks channel. I'm Lisa, also known as Fiber Nymph, and I'm the dyer behind Fiber Nymph DyeWorks Yarn. I'm here today for a very special reason, and that is to introduce my brand new colorway series called the Signature Series of Colorways. I'm so excited about this. It has been in the works for months, literally, and it just officially debuted in my shop yesterday. There was a bit of a sneak peek of a couple of the colorways last month when I did kind of soft launch them at my show in Frederick, but they are officially in the shop now along with their 3 siblings for a total of 5 colorways. So I will tell you up front, they are all available for pre-order now through June 5th. And what I'm going to do right now is I am going to share the colorways with you and talk to you a little bit about them. And then once I've done that, if you want to stick around, I will also share a little bit more in depth about the process I went through to develop these colorways, because this was a different experience in developing these colorways than the way I normally develop colorways. And I know some people are interested in knowing how dyers come up with their colorway ideas and such. So for those of you who are interested in something like that, stick around through the end of the video and I'll give you a little bit of insight. Just a side note, I had some dental work done this morning, hours ago now, but my top lip is still not moving correctly. And so if I seem like I'm struggling to pronounce certain words, especially ones that start with P's or have P's in them, that's why. I'll do the best I can, but it's really, really weird to still not be able to feel part of my face. But that's where we're at today. Okay, so my signature series of colorways, what is it? It is exactly that. I developed 4 colorways in 4 different families of colorways. There are neutrals, brights, jewel tones, and earth tones. And then for the 5th colorway, I decided I was going to pull from each one of those. And then I was also going to choose a color of my own choosing for the 5th colorway that weren't in any of the other 4 and make a pie skein, because pie skeins are sort of my signature, one of my signature items, and I really just wanted to have that be a part of this series. So let's go through these. First up is the neutrals. If you ever write to me or email me or talk to me looking for a color to put with another color, say you want to do a colorwork sweater and you've already got a colorful skein of yarn and you say, what do you think I should put with this as a contrast? 9 times out of 10, I'm probably going to recommend a neutral. I love neutrals. They are so flexible in their use and they work so well with just about everything. So this colorway features 5 of my favorite neutrals. So there's a dark, a medium, and a light gray, as well as plain vanilla and sand. So those are the 5 neutrals. And then we go pretty much to the opposite end of the spectrum, and we get my signature bright colorway. Oh, apparently B's are also difficult to say. Nice. Okay. So we've got the brights. We've got fuchsia, lemon, electric purple, toxic green, and aqua shock as the 5 brights. Then we get a little bit more subdued, but we go to jewel tones, nice deep dark colors. So we have eggplant, winter red, sapphire, merlot, and blue spruce, which is a deep dark bluish green. I love that green. And then we go to probably what the color family is that is my most comfortable spot in the world, and that is the earth tones, because they so embody fall colors. And I'll tell you, it was a challenge to come up with earth tones as a colorway that did not just scream fall, and I think this one is okay. I don't think it quite screams fall as it could, but this one features dark brown, Atlantic blue, ember, light bronze green, and warm honey. So those are the 4 colorway families or color families that are the main 4 colorways of the Signature series. And then, as I said, I really wanted to pull those together and create a pie colorway by choosing one color from each of these 4 families, okay? One color from each of these, and then adding one more of my own that did not go into these. And that might seem like a really easy task, but I'll be honest, it was very challenging because I didn't want to just create a colorway to create a colorway, but it needed to be a cohesive colorway and one that you didn't look at and think, oh, there is something very off with that. Because these are 4 very different color families, right? So I gave myself a little bit of latitude. Since this was largely a Dyer's Choice colorway that I was coming up with, and you might think that the other ones were too, but they weren't so much, and I will explain that whenever I talk about the process in the second part of this video. Those were a little bit more objectively chosen, but the colors in the pie colorway were my Dyer's Choice. So in this colorway, we have Winter Red, which comes from the Jewel Tones. Then next, we have this little narrow stripe, which is the same as this one and this one. It might be easier for you to see there. And I decided that since this was a Dyer's Choice colorway, essentially, and you might think the other ones were too, but they were not. And I will expand on that whenever I get to the second half of the video where I talk about my process, but they were actually much more objectively chosen colors. I was choosing these from those. So anyway, this was my neutral stripe that was coming from the neutrals, and it is actually a custom blended color that I do use in several of my colorways. It's not in here as that, but since I was doing Dyer's Choice, I decided to expand that and also do Dyer's Choice with regard to technique as well. So this bark colorway is a blend of a couple of these dye colors. So that's representing the neutrals. The next one is toxic green, not lime green, is toxic. But as you can see, it's a little bit muted. And I did that because I had to be very selective in putting these together. It's very hard to put 4 color families together and not have something look very, very off. And that was my biggest challenge with doing this pie colorway. And so since I was giving myself latitude, I decided that I was also allowed to modify colors so that they would fit in and not look like hot garbage, because nobody really wants that. So this is the representation of the Brights color. So it is toxic green, just a little less toxic because it's been muted down just a touch. The next one we're going to skip for a second, and then the last one is Warm Honey from the Earth Tones. And then that leaves this purple stripe, which is my Vivid Violet colorway. I use Vivid Violet a ton, and I was absolutely shocked that it did not come up as one of the top 5 for these other families. But when I think about it, it's not a super bright, so it wouldn't have fit in with the Brights, but it's also a little too bright to fit in with the Jewel Tones. So it made sense that it wasn't actually in one of them, but it is my pick. I decided to add that in there because that is my number 5, and I love it, and I think it looks really good with this combination. So this is Signature Series Pie, Signature Pie, Dyer's Choice, and I hope you like it. So in addition to these 5 self-striping colorways, all of these also come in mini skein set form. The mini skeins come in sets of 6, so there is 1 bonus skein added to each of the mini skein sets, and that was also sort of my Dyer's Choice kind of thing. I just added 1 extra colorway to round out those mini sets. I always think that's fun, and the other reason I did that was just so that you have something extra to work with for patterns that you're using mini skeins. A lot of patterns seem to work well with 6 different colors rather than just 5, so I thought it would be good to add in that extra one. So as I said, all of these are up for pre-order in the shop right now. If you pre-order the self-striping, I'm going to go through all these so you can see what they look like in the skeins. So this is the neutrals on Bounce and Mountain Tweed. Brights on Bounce and Mountain Tweed. Jewel Tones, again, Bounce and Mountain Tweed. They're available on other bases as well. I just like to show it on Mountain Tweed since Mountain Tweed is more of an oatmeal base to begin with, so it's always a little bit more muted. These are the earth tones on both of those bases. And finally, Signature Pie on both of those bases. So if you order a self-striping skein in a pre-order, I'm offering the same bonus mini skein with your self-striping that I've done with my last several pre-orders. So you will get a bonus coordinating mini 20-gram mini skein with your self-striping. And again, the mini skein sets are coming with 6 skeins as opposed to just 5. Anyway, that's how they're designed. The pre-order's up now through June 5th. And they will ship by the week of September 19th. It's a little bit longer of a pre-order period this time, only because my husband and I are going to be out of town for 2 weeks in the middle of that. And I just need to make sure that I have enough time to turn these around for you guys. I will say the one other thing that I did this time that's different than I've done before is I have a separate listing that's up in the shop if you want to order the whole collection of self-striping skeins. And that is up there. And if you look in the listing, there is a coupon code in the listing for a 10% discount if you order that full collection from that listing. It doesn't work if you order them individually from the individual listings. You have to use that listing to use that coupon code. And there is a way also for you to mix and match bases in there, so you don't have to order them all on the same base. So if you have any questions about any of that, feel free to email me, lisa@fibernymph.works.com, and I'll be happy to help you out. But yeah, I hope you will enjoy these colorways. I had such a blast coming up with them, and I hope you'll enjoy working with them. That is the bulk of the information about these colorways. I'm now going to go into a little bit of process talk about developing these colorways for those of you who might like to know more. And if you don't, then thank you so much for watching this far. If you place an order, thank you so very much. I will get that out to you just as soon as humanly possible. Okay, so process of coming up with these colorways. Now, like I said, the Pie Day was mostly, the pie skein was mostly my choice. I was choosing from colors that were already established in the first 4 colorways. So this one doesn't apply so much to this process. However, these 4 I came up with very differently than I come up with most of my colorways. I often get asked, like, what is your inspiration? How do you decide on colors? What do you know? And honestly, I never have a whole lot to say because my colorway ideas usually come up pretty organically and intuitively. There are inspirations for them, of course. You know, if you've been following my yarns for a long time, you know I am highly inspired by nature. Like as evidenced by my backyard bird watchers club. I've done colorways based on paddling trips that we've taken, like my river rocks and seashells. And actually seashells wasn't a paddling trip, that was just a beach trip, but my gathering seashells colorway, that was nature oriented. I did Killarney colorways a long time ago. Yeah, I mean, I'm constantly inspired by nature. I live in the mountains. I am surrounded by nature. Behind you is a whole swath of green trees, you know. I can't help but be inspired by the beautiful world around me. I'm also inspired a lot by fantasy, as is evidenced by a Middle-earth Winter Holiday Countdown collection that's going to be coming up, and my Middle-earth Imagined colorways that I'm going to be coming out with later this year. Things like that are always very inspirational. But in this case, with this series, I took a totally different approach. So this is my 12th year dyeing, 12th year in business, and over that course of 12 years, I have created hundreds of colorways. From the early days, I mean, I don't dye a lot of my very early colorways anymore. Matter of fact, I rarely dye any of my early colorways because they were mostly very simple colorways, 2 colors, 3 colors, not a lot of variation in the striping patterns, but it was where I started. And actually back then there weren't a lot of people, indie dyers, doing self-striping, and that's what people were happy with. You know, they were happy to get those kind of colorways, and I was happy to make them because that's what I could do. However, over the years, obviously my skill set grew and my ability to create different colorways grew along with that, and I was able to do higher stripe counts. I think the highest stripe number I've ever done is 12, and I doubt that I'll ever go over that because that's a handful to do. But as far as the colors themselves, I started out by just putting together colors that I liked. They didn't have a lot of specific inspiration behind them. In more recent years, as I just talked about, I do often have very specific inspiration points that I start with, and then I use my creative license to create colorways around them. So earlier this year, when I was trying to think of what I was going to do for my anniversary colorway this year, I conceived of the idea of doing a signature colorway. I thought that would be really fun. I would look back at some of my, more recent colorways over the last couple of years, see what colors I tended to use a lot, and put them together for a colorway, which was a good idea. But as I thought about it more and more, it seemed, that might be a little too narrow because there are a lot of colors that I do use fairly frequently. I don't just use them as the same shade, like, for instance, I don't just use, toxic green. Like, I use toxic green at this strength. Sometimes I use it at a lower strength, so it's lighter. Sometimes I use it at a stronger strength, so it's darker. Sometimes I modify it so that it is not quite as bright. I have also added it together with other colors to create a completely different color using it. But it's a component of this colorway and many others. So I decided what I really wanted to do was see just which dye colors, like the base dye colors that I use, which ones do I use the most frequently, not just straight up as dye colors, but also as components in other dye colors for various colorways. So I took a day this past winter and I sat down for many hours and I went through my dye notebooks. I would say probably over the last four to 5 years. I probably went back as far as like the year before the pandemic. I think that's as far back as I went. And I made a spreadsheet and I recorded every colorway that I had created in that entire time. And then I recorded across the other way all of the dye colors that were components of that, whether they were used straight as those colors or if they were mixed together to form other colors. Each individual color I recorded and marked it as having been used for that colorway. Anyway, after doing that, I then went through and I tallied all of the columns of colors and I could see which ones had been used the most. And do you want to guess which one was the one that got used the absolute most out of any color that I use? Can you guess based on what I said earlier? Yeah, it was the dye color that makes these grays. It's one dye color. I use it in multiple ways. And it's also one that I use to mute other colors. But that particular shade is the one that I use the absolute most, which did not shock me because I do use it a ton for various things. So anyway, what I decided after I looked at that, I thought, well, there's no way I'm going to be able to make one colorway out of all of these colors. Because my first thought was, okay, because I was still thinking signature colorway in a way. But I thought, like, okay, it's my 12th year dyeing. I could do a 12 stripe colorway and use these 12 colors. But when I looked at those top 12 colors, they were not a cohesive colorway. Like, they would not have made something that looked as I would want it to look. So that is when I decided, you know what, I can break these down into color families. So I broke them down into the neutrals, the brights, the jewel tones, and the earth tones. And from there, I was able to pick out the colors that ranked highest in each of those families and arrange them to create these colorways. And that worked so much better. In the case of ties, I did, you know, use my executive privilege to choose which one I wanted to use based on which one I thought would work best. But I'm really happy with how they turned out. And they did create what I'm considering to be 4 really representative colorways for the colors that I use in my dyeing on a really regular basis. I think it worked super well. It was just a much more objective approach to creating colorways than I've really ever done before. It was fine. I would never want to have to do that for every colorway I created. I used to try to be very literal whenever I was trying to create a colorway based on something, like, say, a bird. I would try to be very literal in looking at a lot of pictures of that bird and what colors are in that bird and like what percentage of the bird is this color versus this color, and try to recreate that within the colors and the striping pattern. And what I learned really quickly in doing that was that that doesn't always work super well. You know, dyeing, like so many other, well, like all other art forms, is a creative process, and as the dyer, you have to be willing to embrace your own creativity to make representations that interpret that inspiration in the medium that you're working with. And in my case, that is yarn. So, yeah, so that was my process in coming up with these. It was a lot of fun. I'll be happy to get back to other ways of, you know, coming up with colorways in the future. But for now, I had a good time with these, and I hope you enjoy them. And I hope you enjoyed hearing a little bit about the the design process, not the dye process. The dye process is pretty much the same every time I dye. Not a lot of deviation there. So anyway, that is everything I wanted to tell you about my signature series of colorways. Again, they are up in the shop right now for pre-order. Now through June 5th, then they'll come down. They'll ship out within a few weeks after that. And then once the pre-orders have shipped out, I will eventually be putting these colorways in the shop. And because their signature series nature, I do plan to keep them in the shop on a pretty regular basis for the foreseeable future. If this interests you, please check it out. There's all kinds of more details in the listings. And again, I'm happy to answer any questions you might have. But thank you so much for watching, and I will talk to you again real soon. Bye.